Welcome to our second season of Stratford Mail, a smart little history podcast from Stratford Hall Historic Preserve, where the voices of American history still speak. Find us online at stratfordmail.org and at stratfordhall.org. We're so glad you're back, and we hope you'll share Stratford Mail with a friend or colleague. Here now is our Director of Research, Dr. Gordon Blaine Steffi.
This month on Stratford Mail, recollections from a bleak midwinter 248 years ago when a river was crossed and a tide turned. In that bleak midwinter, Ensign Peter Jaquette of the 1st Delaware Regiment voiced the mood of many in the Continental Army.
A thick cloud of darkness and gloom covered the land, and despair was seen in almost every countenance.
December 1776 was a gloomy hour for our new country. Only 5 months prior, 12 colonial delegations with New York in abstention voted in favor of Richard Henry Lee's resolution to declare independence from Great Britain. A plan for forming foreign alliances, mostly commercial in nature, had been adopted in September, and a plan for confederation was in the works, but wouldn't be finalized until the next year. As British troops rolled up a string of victories from White Plains down to Fort Lee, General Washington and the Continental Army were driven out of New York, hounded through New Jersey, and on December 8, 1776, retreated across the Delaware River into the wilds of Pennsylvania. Decades later, American painter and Continental Army veteran Charles Willson Peale would describe the retreat to Thomas Jefferson as
the most hellish scene I have ever beheld.
And he despaired of his ability to do more than offer hints for reflection. Casualties, captives, and desertions had significantly reduced Patriot numbers, and troop enlistments were set to expire with the new year. Patriot morale was low, and the prospects for American success were never grimmer. This was no time for what Thomas Paine on December 19th called summer soldiers and sunshine patriots. On December 3rd, Stratford Richard Henry Lee from Philadelphia wrote his old friend and ally, now governor of the independent Commonwealth of Virginia, Patrick Henry.
Dear Sir, the present moment is critical in the American war. The enemy have taken vigorous advantage of the space between the old and the new enlistments, and have rushed like a torrent through the Jerseys, our little army of no more than 5,000 men under the command of General Washington, being compelled to retreat rapidly before them. The object is this city, and they were Sunday last at Brunswick, about 60 miles off in the Jerseys. If the people here have any title to the freedom they claim, Mr. Howe will not be gratified with the possession of this city, and if he gained 20 such cities, still he would be short of gaining the point meditated over America. You remember, sir, we told them from the beginning that we looked on our cities and seacoasts as devoted to destruction, but that ample resources were still left for a numerous brave and free people to contend with.
Congress shared Richard Henry's concern about the vulnerability of Philadelphia to a British advance, and on December 12th, the new government resolved to reconvene 8 days later at the Henry Fight House in Baltimore. On the 18th, Richard Henry updated Patrick Henry from Baltimore.
At this place, the public business can be conducted with more deliberation and undisturbed attention than could be the case in a city subject to perpetual alarm, and that had necessarily been made a place of arms. The British Army is at present stationed along the Delaware from above Trenton to Burlington, about 20 miles above Philadelphia. General Washington is on the riverside opposite to Trenton.
Philadelphia would be taken and retaken, but not yet. Meantime, Congress delegated command of war efforts entirely to General Washington. Lacking sufficient boats to pursue Washington and the tattered remainder of the Continental Army across the river, and with temperatures dipping, British General William Howe suspended military operations and returned to New York to wait out the winter. On the New Jersey side of the Delaware, Trenton was garrisoned by a force of around 1,400 Hessian auxiliaries. Professional soldiers contracted from German states to fight for the British crown. In an effort to shore up the failing war effort, boost morale, and encourage reenlistments, Washington and his war council resolved to hit the Hessian garrison at Trenton on Christmas night, 1776. It was a desperate risk, and 2 days prior to the attack, Washington wrote to his aide-de-camp, Colonel Joseph Reed,
"Dire necessity will, nay, must, justify my attack."
In the dead of night, with the temperature dancing around the freezing point and in driving sleet, Washington and around 2,400 Continentals crossed the icy Delaware in ferries and cargo boats. From the landing site at Johnson's Ferry, Continentals marched 9 miles amid the howling nor'easter to the outskirts of Trenton, arriving around 8 a.m. The able Hessians were nevertheless routed in under 2 hours of fierce combat, and the Continentals recrossed the Delaware with 900-odd Hessian prisoners in tow. News of the victory at Trenton swept like wildfire across the colonies, dispiriting the British and rekindling the flames of possibility, confidence, and hope in Americans. As Richard Henry rightly observed, the moment was critical, and it lifted the thick cloud of darkness and gloom that vexed the Army and many Americans. The subsequent victory at Princeton on January 3rd served further to dissolve that bleak midwinter. On December 30th, and on behalf of the Committee of Secret Correspondence, Richard Henry Lee drafted a letter to the American commissioners in France, one of whom was his brother, Dr. Arthur Lee, informing them of Washington's success at Trenton and offering up this wish.
We hope this blow will be followed by others that may leave the enemy not so much to boast of as they some days ago expected.
A follow-up drafted on January 9th shared with the commissioners the happy news of Washington's success at Princeton. Trenton and Princeton were risky endeavors that paid high dividends in confidence and recommitment to the Patriot cause. Richard Henry's relief in the rising optimism was apparent in his letter to Brigadier General Adam Stephen on January 5th. The critical moment in the American war had gone the Patriot way.
Nothing could have happened more opportunely than the drubbing you have given the Hessians at Trenton. The genius of America seems now to be awakening from profound sleep.
On the eve of the year 1777, Washington appeared before his troops and conjured that genius in an address that placed them at the center of a singular historical moment. This might be their only chance to raise their heads above the encompassing and obscuring mists of history in the service of an honorable, precious, and deeply personal cause.
You have done all I asked you to do, and more than could be reasonably expected. But your country is at stake. Your wives, your houses, and all that you hold dear. You have worn yourselves out with fatigues and hardships, but we know not how to spare you. If you will consent to stay 1 month longer, you will render that service to the cause of liberty and to your country, which you can probably never do under any other circumstance.
Major General Nathaniel Greene attributed the re-enlistments that followed to a higher power.
God Almighty inclined their hearts to listen to the proposal, and they engaged anew.
The war was just beginning, but as 1777 dawned cold and uncertain, winter settling onto the colonies from New Hampshire to Georgia, there was now a light on the distant horizon. In March of the new year, the Patriot government reconvened in Philadelphia after its brief exile in Baltimore. In 6 months' time, they will again flee Philadelphia on the heels, this time, of Washington's defeat at Brandywine, and only days in front of an 8-month occupation of the rebel capital by General William Howe. But that is a story for another day. I'm Dr. Gordon Blaine Steffi, wishing you all a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a brave New Year from Stratford Hall in Westmoreland County, Virginia.
Dear listener, you can do more than just listen. Become an active participant with Stratford Hall in the production of new and exciting programs like Stratford Mail. Please donate online at stratfordhall.org/donate. And above all, share Stratford Mail with someone you know, someone you love. They'll be so happy you did,